I'm going to do today is reshoot how we currently set the gap on the field coil to the flywheel and magnets. When we originally shot this on engine number 15 video, that'd be called flywheel and our field coil and flywheel part 2. We didn't have this new way of setting the gap by measuring it, and then so we did a lot of trial and error. We've got a new way. We learned this from our friend in Pueblo, Colorado. He asked us why we worked so hard to get it done, and told us how to make it easier. So I'm going to try to shoot that today and explain as I go. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the field coil and try to get it level. I do have found one of these original Ford shims, and so I'm going to use it. If you don't have this, it's about 15 thousandths or so, so you can make it up from the shim pack. And the first thing I'm going to do is just install the field coil in kind of a temporary setup and then see if it's level. I'm not going to talk too much so that I can edit it and then make it go fast. So all I've got in here now is that special Ford shim that you can find from time to time. So I'm touching all the way around except for this side out here, and I'm a little bit off. So I'm going to add a shim here and here, not very much, and that'll bring this side up. We'll see what that feels like. So I've got a couple of little shims here, and I measured this earlier, and it's about that's 2 of the little shims, so it's about 4 thousandths. So that brought this side up because we raised the center piece here and left this, didn't add any shims here. So that raised the back outside out here where it's not supported. And we're just touching all the way around, so just based on the sound and how easy it goes over, I'd say we're pretty level with this field coil. So on the next step, we're going to loosen these bolts, leaving the shims in place that we've got, because we know if we tighten it back down, it will still be level. Then we'll install the flywheel and with magnets on it. And what's going to happen is because the magnets are right in here, this will suck this up to it'll suck it up to the magnets, and then we're going to measure the gap that results, and then we'll do a quick calculation to say how many shims we need to add at each one of these locations. Should be the same all the way around since we've made this level, but we'll check and see. And we've already done the alignment process, so we know that this main shaft needs to go on this direction, because I've marked both the main shaft and the crankshaft. It needs to go on that way, and we will. We've got the locator pins are already in the flywheel. Okay, so now we'll see if we can install this flywheel. There we go. Just had to work it around, find the holes. You'll notice that it's sucked this field coil up against the magnets now, so we don't have any play there. Doesn't have anything to do with the spacing, so you don't have to install all the bolts, because the flywheel's been sucked up against the magnets, and what we're going to measure is this gap. So installing these bolts is just kind of a safety factor, because it really doesn't make any difference, because the field coil is not attached to the block, and it's been sucked up tight against the magnets on the flywheel. Remember, we got the field coil was level all the way across. So the next thing I want to do is measure this gap in here. And remember, I've got some shims in there already that I needed to put in there to level the field coil feeler gauge here, so I can get into that. And I'd say, just feeling it there, that this gap is somewhere in between 27 and 30 thousandths. Check this gap over here. On this side, I think it's more like 27 thousandths. So what I'm going to want to do, because the field coil was level, so I'm going to want to add a calculated value here. Right now there's a 27 thousandths gap there. The requirement is that we have this gap here end up being 25 to 40 thousandths. So I'm thinking that all I've got to do, because this measures 27 to 30 now, so if I tighten this, if I go ahead and tighten the field coil up, and then install and tighten up the flywheel with the magnets on it, I think we'll end up somewhere between 25 and 30 thousandths. A lot of times, if you don't have the field coil level, or if you don't have that good spacer to start with, you might have to add more shims in here, say maybe 13 to 15 to 18 thousandths, in order to get this gap where it is at least 25 to 40 thousandths. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go back, take this flywheel off, tighten it down, and then I'll measure the gap. Okay, I got it. So what I did basically is these bolts were loose, and getting this field coil sucked up against the magnets on the flywheel. And then I measured the gap, and I measured that gap right in here underneath the between the field coil and the block. And remember, there were some shims in there already, and the field coil was basically level. And we measured 27 to 30, so I'm looking for a gap of no less than 25 and not greater than 40. So since we're really close to that already, I'm going to tighten this down, put the flywheel back on, and we'll check the gap. For final assembly, I'll have to wire this, and don't forget to put my internal oil line in. And I'll have to work on that a little bit to make it fit. So I'm going to put the flywheel on, check it. If everything's okay, I'll take the flywheel off, do a final install on these bolts, wire them, get the internal oil line in, and I'll be finished. There we go. So you see, we're not touching the field coil now. So a little more risky. So I'll go ahead and get a bolt started. And it is important that we tighten this down because we're going to be pulling the flywheel into the field coil. So we need to make sure it's snug. And I already don't like this. It sounds like it's too close. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the gap, and what I have is a 25 thousandths brass feeler gauge, and if I can go all the way around with this, I'm going to be happy that it's that I'm greater than my minimum. It's a little tight out there, a little tight, a little tight, a little tight, a little tight. It's okay down this side, but it's so, in fact, it's real good over here. But I'm a little tight on this back side over here. Remove some washers, or some of the, well, see, in places it's okay, but in other places it's pretty tight, which means the magnets are not dead on, and the magnets on the flywheel are not dead on, and the magnets on the field coil are not dead on. So that's interesting. It's still pretty tight, so I'm going to have to probably going to have to remove that board shim and start back with just the shim packs, because I don't need that whole 15 thousandths to make this work. Very interesting. So I'm going to kind of review where we are in the process here. And I'll zoom in so that you can see this better. But basically we start out with this set of shims here, and that made the field coil level. We had this forward shim, and then we added these two shim packs, which measure around 4 to 6 thousandths, I guess, 4 thousandths, 6 thousandths. Yeah, that's right. And about 6 thousandths on each side. Yeah, 6.5 thousandths. And that configuration made the field coil level. The problem with this configuration was that it put the field coil and the magnets too close. It was right at, and on one side, right at 25 thousandths, which is the minimum. And then on the other side, I couldn't get the 25 thousandths to go, feeler gauge to go through, so it's too close. So what we're going to do, this forward shim measures between 15 and 16 thousandths. Right there, 16 thousandths, 16.5 thousandths, 17 thousandths. So it's about 16.5, 17 thousandths. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with a shim pack configuration that cuts that 15, 16 thousandths in half. So I want a shim pack that's about 8 thousandths, and then check for level all the way around with the K.R. Wilson gauge. And so what I've done is gone out to and got into my inventory of shims where I've separated them, and I want to be about 8 to 10 thousandths. This is 10 here. This shim pack is 9.5. This group of shims gives us about 10. And this group gives us about 8. So I really need to reduce these down to about these down to about 8 thousandths each instead of 10. And then that should give us between 25 and 35 thousandths clearance, and the target is 25 to 40 clear. So I'm gonna replace this shim with shim packs that are about 8 to 9 thousandths thick, and then make sure I'm level on the field coil. So now I have adjusted the shim packs, and I've got these are all now at about 8.5 or so, and I'm going to use these shims to replace this shim, and I'm going to leave these two shims so it's going to look like this when I put it together, which I'm going to do now. I'm going to set that up over on the block. I've got all those shims, and including the ones that it took to make it level before. These bolts, since unlike what we did in the other video, I don't cut these so that I can kind of manage getting them in better. So it's a little tighter on this side. So I may see if I can pull just a little bit out of that one. See what it feels like. So I'm going to take one shim out. I like that a lot better. It feels about the same all the way around. So we're going to go ahead now and put the flywheel magnets back on. So this is a after production comment that Terry Finn made on setting up the field coil and the flywheel magnets and so forth. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see, but basically it has to do with these little tabs on the shims, the additional shims that we put in there, and then the ability to put your hogshead on and not get them involved in the installation of the hogshead. And so I'll zoom in and show you what I'm talking about. These little tabs that we see sticking out right here are actually the shims, the shim packs and the parts of the shims. If you got 2 or 3 loose ones or separated ones, then they can kind of fold over. And this area right here is where the felt seal goes, or gasket, and then the hogshead sits down right in this area. And Terry pointed out that it might be a good idea to fold these tabs back in along the field coil rather than leaving them stick out. On one side, they're a good thing to help hold that felt in place. On the bad side, he says, when you put the hogshead on, it tends to want to fold those things over and get on top of the felt and interrupt the seal between the hogshead and that felt. So I'm going to insert this in the video. Obviously, I did not do that. He pointed it out to me in reviewing the video, and I appreciate that comment and feedback. I think that's a good idea. Okay, so I've now gotten got it all tight, and it looks to me like, just looking at it, that we're going to be in pretty good shape here. I'll get the 25 thousandths brass feeler gauge and see if we can go all the way around. No problem there, no problem, no problem, no problem. No problem. Good. So we're good all the way there. I'll check it again. Spin it and check it. Good. There you go, no problem. Plenty good, no problem. So, and I can tell by by this 25 that we're real close to the minimum there, which ought to create a really good magneto. There's no sense in checking the max because these are all so close that I'm confident that we're not over 40. So that's how you do it. Instead of all that trial and error, if you pull this field coil up to the magnets and then measure the gap back here, you can get really close with one setup. And I like to figure out, do the math on it, and then set it up so that the field coil is level, because the assumption is you did a pretty good job of getting the magnets level when you built the flywheel. So that's the new way of setting up the field coil magnet gap without all that trial and error. So now I got to go back, take this flywheel off, or this flywheel off, and complete tighten those bolts. They're tight, but wire those bolts and install the internal oil line, and then put this flywheel back on, and we're ready to continue with the assembly.